I think using data and using AI to help the advisor be more aware of when those moments are so that the advisor can meet their client in those moments. I think that's the personalization of the future. It's not a set of stocks and bonds and mutual funds that's right. I think it's how do I make sure that I'm meeting the client when they need me to and at the right moment with the right set of information. That's personalization going forward.
Welcome to Knowing Me, Knowing You, the podcast for the future of wealth management. Thanks for being here. I'm Marla Sofer. Money is a tool. It empowers people. Let's dive into how technology is personalizing advice, strengthening connections, and creating lasting impact. If you're an advisor looking to differentiate, a fintech leader shaping the next wave, or a client ready to take control of your financial future, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hi, and today we are joined by Molly Weiss, a seasoned financial services executive with over 2 decades of experience driving innovation in wealth management. As the group president of wealth management platform at Envestnet, Molly leads the end-to-end technology and services ecosystem that supports portfolio management, financial planning, performance reporting, and digital account management. Molly is known for integrating Envestnet's acquisitions and partnerships to enhance advisor and investor experiences. She's passionate about reshaping leadership norms, thinking about how we support future generations financially, and leveraging AI to understand clients on a deeper level, not just through data aggregation, but through behavioral insight. A proud Silicon Valley mom of 2 high schoolers, Molly brings both personal and professional perspective to today's conversation. Molly, thank you so much for being here, and welcome to the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me, Marla.
It's been a joy to get to know you a little bit. What is the thing that is exciting you most about the moment that we're in right now in wealth?
I just think we're headed for some very rapid change and innovation. And I think it's overdue and I'm excited about it. I'm nervous about it, like probably a lot of people in my seat are. But I just think there's so much potential to be better over the next months and couple of years. And so I think that's really exciting.
That resonates. I think a lot of excitement and nerves kind of go together. These are like, they're peas in a pod. They're yin and yang. So if you were going to have to say like, what's the one piece that you're excited about and one thing you're nervous about?
I'm really excited about making financial services, advice, sort of financial wellness more accessible. I think that the addition of AI and making things more conversational and having it not be this scary thing that only rich people do is really exciting to me because I think it make it accessible in a much different and more meaningful way. I'm nervous about what it's going to look like in 2 years. I think that we're all nervous about lots of different things that AI might change or that innovation and more rapid development might change. But I think this space could look really different. And the unknown, I think, is what's a little bit scary.
Yeah. And I actually appreciate that you said 2 years, which I think is rooted in reality. We're not talking about 10 years right now.
No.
We're talking about, the next 6 months, 18 months, 2 years. This is the pace of change. So I would love to learn a little bit more about you and your journey. You have spent 2 decades in this world of wealth tech. So wealth tech, asset management, what has kept you passionate about this work in particular? And what are some moments that have shaped your approach to leading innovation?
So I've always liked systems. I'm fascinated by order and how things work, both from a technology perspective, which, wasn't necessarily what I studied, but it was what I gravitated to, but also just from an organization perspective. So I think financial services, and in particular, financial services technology has a lot of systems, a lot of organization, and a lot of potential to be better. And so I think those things have kept me interested in, how technology can help financial services, can help advisors. I think maybe more personally, for a lot of people, money is a complicated thing. There's sort of great things about, money and what it can do for you. And then there's lots of scary things about not having money or not knowing the right thing to do with your money. And so I think I just, naturally found this area really interesting. The intersection of both kind of money and technology, I think, are both really interesting to me.
So you kind of shared that you're excited also about the future and the exciting future of access and making money a lot more different and meaningful. As you think about what drew you in, like 2 decades ago, what was the thing that you were like, hey, this is really interesting? I kind of like this opportunity to use tech in a way that helps people with their wealth, helps people and their money in a way that will, I don't know, help them manage their money, invest their money for a better future.
Well, so this is a bit personal, but my grandfather, who I really looked up to, he was very successful in business. He was brilliant. He was a little bit grumpy, but like people kind of loved him anyway. I mean, he was like a great guy. He was a great grandpa. And he actually passed away right around the time that I was finishing college. And he had grown up through the Depression. And my grandmother, when he died, because he didn't trust any financial institution, he had money at every bank in San Francisco and had 3 financial advisors and money under the couch. Like I remember seeing the boxes of money under the couch, and it was just he had this massive distrust of the system that I care so much about. He just did not trust it. And so my poor grandma was left to sort of like reconcile all of these different accounts and this sort of lack of visibility. And I think I was amazed by it because here's this man that came from nothing and, became so successful. But also I was just like, wow, that's like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be, more help to somebody who ends up in that situation. And I sort of fell into this internship that was like squarely at that sort of right moment. And it was talking about the right things. And it just really resonated with me. So I think that's kind of what brought me in.
Thank you so much for sharing the story. And it is often those kind of points in time, the sliding doors moments where, kind of right situation, right time, right personal story that just made this so resonant and relevant. You've now been in the industry for over 20 years. You have seen it evolve from the inside out. You have this really exciting, very powerful role at Envestnet. Sorry. What about this moment just feels very urgent to you? What about right now feels different than over the last 20 years?
I think that it's the pace and I think it's expectation. So I think pace, meaning what we were talking about before, I think things are going to change. I think innovation is going to happen more quickly. I think expectations around what technology can do will change. But I think it's also, we're sort of at this place where, everybody in our industry talks about wealth changing hands from one generation to another, women having more say in, money decisions. And that paired with the expectation that we'll all have because of our daily lives and ChatGPT or whatever you might be interfacing with just feels like this moment of, we're going to hit the ground, things are going to happen faster. And also people and humans are going to have different expectations and they're going to have different profiles almost. So I just think that this is like the time to get it right for somebody in my seat, for somebody in your seat, for people who are really thinking about what do we want this industry and what do we want technology to do for this industry in the next couple of years. Like it just feels like this is the moment. If we're going to get it right, it's now.
I love that. And it resonates so much. I feel like there is so much in what you're saying about the urgency of getting it right, the pace of how fast things are moving and the expectations. And what I've seen in my own journey is the importance of context. There's a lot of people trying to do so much right now in financial services and fintechs that are starting off, they're getting funding, but they don't necessarily have context. And now you have investors and people in this industry who've been through a couple of cycles and they're like, just because you got funding, it doesn't mean it's going to work. And even more, it doesn't mean you're going to have a profitable, viable business. We've kind of seen the rise and the fall of the robo-advisor, and we've seen the rise and the fall of a lot of these great ideas. We have seen inertia to tech in wealth management for years. What do you think is holding us back? What is it that is keeping, and I'll just quote an unnamed consultant friend of mine who said that you have kind of the average human and then you have the wealth manager who's probably several years behind the average person as it comes to technology. Why is that? Why is it that wealth is so far behind?
Well, I mean, I think maybe you could say that we've had the luxury of protecting the way that we do things and the way that we make money. And I think that has allowed for us to maybe be a little bit more stale than we should have been, or to think a little bit less about what that human experience on the other side is. And I think that the question will be, how do we remain impactful and resonate with what the human needs enough to be successful in what we're trying to do. And I think that that's absolutely possible. It's just we've never had a level of disruption like I think we're seeing now with technology to really force change in the way that I think it needs to happen and will happen now. And I think it's about thinking about people first. I think that's really the shift, in my opinion. The success will come for those who really think about what does that human need and how can I serve that human?
So interesting. You think about, and I talk a lot about this on the podcast, the power of incentives. And if the incentive of any corporation is to pay stakeholders of that corporation, we've not been kicked off of our kilter yet in wealth. We're still kind of sitting on laurels, making a heck of a lot of money with pretty undifferentiated services that are not all that digitally friendly, not even friendly to digitally, not without talking about innovating. It's not even digital at all. There's still so many wealth managers still struggling with paper and signatures, much less digital experiences. So you talked a little bit at the end there about personalization and being connected to humans. How are you looking at personalization and the different technology tools, AI included, data capture, planning? How do you see personalization and AI coming together in this future moment that we're heading into?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about that question is personalization for a while has meant a portfolio that is specific to a person, meaning it's still very much about what investments am I providing to that person. What I think is interesting about personalization is going beyond just a portfolio of investments that's, a unique model. And it's much more about, I think that the role of the financial advisor can be very much one of understanding where their client is in each moment of their life, like meeting the client in those moments. And so I think, and I'm talking to you and you know this best, but I think using data and using AI to help the advisor be more aware of when those moments are so that the advisor can meet their client in those moments. I think that's the personalization of the future. It's not a set of stocks and bonds and mutual funds that's right. I think it's how do I make sure that I'm meeting the client when they need me to and at the right moment with the right set of information. That's personalization going forward.
Thank you for tying it into also like Nomi's whole premise is what is so critical. It's knowing so much more context and knowing the client. One of the things that I would love your thoughts on is when we think about going back to the incentives, what's the inertia? What's been holding us back? Well, we've been making a lot of money. So when you think about incentives to actually want to know the client, want to know the client as they're evolving through the moments they're in and the changes they're going through. If I'm an advisor, the incentive that I think I have is I want to make more money. I want to grow my business. I want to make more money. I want more wallet share from each of my clients. I want to sell them more products. When you think about kind of the combination of that inertia of, I haven't really changed or iterated that much. I've only ever been taught to sell portfolio allocation. I only know how to kind of sell a investment offering. How do you kind of think about the future of incentive models where it's not enough to be incentivized to sell a product and to grow your business because, you are incentivized to grow your business, but it's not through that product push. It's through this kind of actually let me understand. There is an inherent incentive. And one thing I've struggled with, would love your thoughts on, is do advisors understand that? Do they recognize that growth is going to come from deeper understanding? Or are they still sitting on their laurels, not recognizing that the incentive model is kind of staling along with them?
I think that's what I find so interesting about this time. I think the rise of sort of the robo movement, everyone said, well, investors are going to expect their interaction to be like Amazon or to be like Netflix or, whatever the tech was. But the reality was that, I don't think we were quite there yet. And I think we weren't quite there yet, both from a technology perspective. I think the technology wasn't quite there yet. And I think also the people were not there, that the consumer, the investor was not there yet. I think that we've made significant progress over the last, few years in terms of people's tech savviness and also their expectations of what technology can do for them. And so I almost feel like wealth advisors, I think clients might bring them with them versus I think what happened, in the past was it was the other way around. The advisors were sort of leading the clients. And I almost feel like in this case and this moment, so interesting because I think that my expectation is that that's going to shift a little bit. So the advisors who, are able to meet the client in those moments will be the ones that are rewarded with more wallet share, with, referrals, with wanting that client wanting to do more with the advisor. And so and maybe this is too hopeful of an answer, but I guess my hope is that that shift happens very organically as client or investor expectations shift. And the thing I would add, though, is I think that we were being a little bit critical of our industry for being behind or, not quite evolving as quickly. But I also think that it's a tough place to evolve. We have technology that's been around in some cases for, 50 years. We have old processes that were very paper-based for so long. And that's not easy to just wake up and change. But I do think that now we're in a place where that change can happen. And so it almost feels, going back to, your earlier questions, like we're in this sweet spot of like the tech's making it possible. Investors' expectations are changing. And the advisor, who decides to really take advantage of those two dynamics will win, because I think that just will be kind of a natural evolution.
What if financial planning wasn't just about numbers, but about you, your values, your goals, your vision for the future? Nomi is transforming client discovery for wealth managers, going beyond assets and risk scores to uncover what truly matters. With behavioral insights and real-time data, Nomi helps advisors personalize advice, build deeper connections, and grow their businesses. Because the best financial decisions start with knowing you. Discover the future of client engagement at nomi.com. I'm so glad you shared that. And you're right. So much has been changing and it's not easy. It's not easy in a very regulated environment where everyone kind of has been conditioned. Like you have to focus on compliance first to make all of these changes. I think you also raised a great point about the people are changing. And it's not just that the people and their expectations are changing. It's going back to the incentives. So 2008, during that last financial crisis, was 17 years ago. Like, just think about that. That's almost a generation ago, 17 years ago. And the people who went through that first financial crisis were kind of the believers in robo and this future of advice. But now those same people have money. So now it's like the people are changing, but the balance of capital has also changed in 17 years. So it is the generation of Gen Xers that are looking for value in wealth management. So when you've already spoken a lot about this, but just to kind of see if there's any other comments you can share about how we're looking at value. And a lot of wealth managers are saying, well, I'm just going to cast a big net and sell more product. I'm not just going to sell investments. I'm also going to sell insurance and credit and estate plans and tax. And so if I kind of cover all the bases in financial services, that's kind of how they're looking at value. Do you have any thoughts on how the industry could be looking at value in the future and how that can shift, how advisors use tech to deliver it?
Well, I will tell you, and I'm going to take it a little bit personal again, and I don't know if I hope my financial advisor is watching this or not, but what I want from my financial advisor is for him to be on the other end of the line when I'm like, I'm really nervous about something, or oh my gosh, my mom's getting to a place where she probably can't live alone anymore. Or, just tell me one more time that my kids, I've been saving smartly for college. Or like, I don't actually, and this is why I hope he's not listening, I don't care so much what he's got me invested in. I mean, of course I care that I'm not like, losing money at every turn. And obviously there's like kind of a basic expectation of what I want my portfolio to be, but I'm much less concerned about the very specific things that he may feel are important. But I do care a lot about how he responds when I tell him that I'm worried about something. And by the way, what I would prefer is that he proactively asks me when he thinks something might be happening in my life that is concerning or unsettling. And I think, there's maybe a valid question of, do financial advisors now have to become therapists, and should they all go to some level of schooling to help them think, more about the holistic psyche of somebody? And I don't think that that's necessarily true, but I will tell you that I saw something interesting about AI last week, and it was talking about how one of the most helpful things that AI will be for people like financial advisors in professions like that is memory. So I get annoyed when I have to tell my advisor something like, well, my kid's graduating college, or graduating high school in 2 years or whatever, like the case may be. And I think that it's almost like advisors, if they look at it the right way, will get a cheat sheet because AI will give them effectively a cheat sheet to Molly. It'll be like, here are the 4 things she probably is really worried about. And by the way, her son's name is X, and that has always existed kind of, but it's been in like different places and it hasn't been necessarily personal information. It's been very like functional information. I feel like the tools will be there for an advisor who wants to listen to what I just said and think about it that way. And I go back to what I said before. I think those advisors will win.
Yeah, I love everything you said for so many reasons, but I do think if there's one good takeaway here, and we can put it in the comments in the podcast that people see, is that people want help with their life as they're living it. They want the advisor to show up when they're needed, to know that they're making the right decisions for themselves, their families, their futures. What they're not as interested in is how many bips did I beat this arbitrary benchmark by? And I think that message is getting through. I think advisors know it and they're hearing it. So we're coming close to the end, but I want to ask you a couple more questions. One is just about this what's now being quoted as the 124 trillion. It keeps going up, great wealth transfer, and women as decision makers. And you have, I think, been very, very bravely stated, hey guys, the idea is not to dumb it down for the women. Women don't need to be dumbed down to. That is not the solution. There's a lot of advisors that listen to this. What would be your advice to, and you just gave them so much. And if they weren't listening, they should go back and, repeat, rewind, listen to that part again. What else do you have to share with them about engaging women?
I would say just absolutely don't make it dumb and don't make it pink and don't make it, fluffy. I think make it human and personal and contextual, to use the word that you used before. I think what may not work about what they've always been doing is probably what also might not work for men going forward as well, or the next generation, or, my kids. I don't think it's about specifically women and dumbing it down somehow. I think it's about really surfacing what's important to the human. And I think not lumping people into a category, because what I would argue is I may show up to my advisor and look a lot more like his male clients, whereas another woman may show up and she may look more like the Gen Z clients. I mean, you just, to make one broad statement is to me crazy. So, which goes back to exactly what we were talking about, personalization. Don't think about it like, here's a woman now I'm advising. It's a person, and where is she at and what does she need and how can I meet her where she needs me to?
Yes, I would say we've done a lot of research at NOMI that has validated that exact thing. So we have kind of a little bit overcompensated, where more than 50% of the people we've interviewed have been Gen X and older millennial women who have been the primary breadwinners, who have made their financial decisions. And a lot of those heuristics in our society have proven false. These women want to hear, they want to actually become much more knowledgeable about how to make better decisions. So coming back to your role at Envestnet, you have done so much work on integrating acquisitions. You've looked at a lot of what fintech is doing. You are one of the biggest, if not the biggest, wealth tech platform out there. And so you're very familiar with third-party tools and how they're working. If you were just going to give us a couple of notes on what is the lay of the land today and what are you most excited about? You kind of have talked a lot about making advice human and bringing that data out, but how are you looking at that at Envestnet?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things. As you know, I'm super excited about what you're doing because I think that the personalization and ways of what we have traditionally called prospecting or even financial planning are ripe for revolution and evolution. And I think that is something that I think a lot about, both from what does Envestnet build, but also where does Envestnet partner? Because I just think that that's a newer concept that we all have a good deal of room for improvement in handling or helping advisors handle. The other thing that, I'm certainly excited about is simplification. So I'm excited that it will become easier to integrate with third parties. I'm a big fan of partnering where it makes sense and not building all the time, because I think there's, so many ways to specialize and to think about things through a different lens. And so I'm excited about how much more open architecture I think technology can become, again, over that 2-year period. I just think that it's going to get easier to share data. I think it's going to get easier to integrate. And so the third thing I would say is simplification. Again, last week I was talking to somebody and they were sort of rightly complaining about how sometimes it's really hard to navigate the Envestnet platform or any financial services platform that's been around for a while, because you've got to know where you log in, and then you have to know where you need to go, and you have to remember what things are called, and maybe you're logging into 3 different platforms. And so you've got to kind of remember all of that. And I think that we have the opportunity now to make that a lot simpler, and also to make it easier when I am using more than one platform. So maybe I'm an advisor and I'm using Nomi as a part of my, journey, and financial planning is a component of that. And then I'm using Envestnet for portfolio management and trade execution. And I think where we're headed is that all can happen in a much, much, much more seamless way, which to me is super, super exciting. I'm excited about being able to partner more easily and to make things easier for the advisor and their sort of day-to-day experience of using one or more platforms.
Yeah, I love it. We in tech, we throw out the word interoperability all the time. And I love that you didn't use it, and you didn't go with that easy jargony word, but you described what it is. It's simplifying, and it's making the data actually show up where you need it, when you need it, for the purpose that you want it for, to serve your client or to go through whatever workflow you're doing at that one moment. So last question we always end with, and you've already shared a couple, but are there any other instances in your life or conversations you've had that have changed your personal relationship with money?
Well, I guess what I would say is that I grew up in a family that didn't have a lot of money. And what has really struck me is that as much as I may, make over the course of my lifetime, or as financially secure as I ever might become, I never actually feel it. And that's fascinating to me, because I think that it shows how much more money is than just money. Because if logically I can look at my bank account and say, I can, pay all my bills, I'm fine, my kids are fine, everything's fine, but I still feel that level of uncertainty and sort of unsettledness, it tells you, and again, this kind of goes back to your question about value, but that means that there is value that I need to derive from a service or a person or a financial advisor, because I need help reconciling it. So it's not just this objective. Money isn't this objective thing that you count. It may be for a few people. I'd love to meet those people. But it really is something much more than that. It means security, or it means insecurity, and it has all kinds of feelings wrapped up in it. And so I think that that's, just my evolution of having come from not very much to now, having sort of been objectively successful, but still feeling that insecurity is fascinating and telling. And I think advisors should take note of that.
That was an incredibly powerful ending, and I'm so grateful that you shared it. I think everyone can relate to what you said. I'm so grateful for your being here on the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast and this really great conversation. And thank you for a career of pushing the industry to think differently, and for now looking at integration and partnering and simplifying the way that people connect with professionals to make better financial decisions, to feel okay, to live better lives. So your voice is extremely powerful. I feel that there were so many ways we could have taken this discussion. And I wanted to really hone in on your view of the future of wealth, because I definitely see that you are one of the strongest leaders in our industry crafting it. You are architecting the future of wealth. You're in a seat that enables you to do that. So I'm so grateful that you're here. And the future of wealth, as you're saying, is not all about technology. It's not all about, in fact, it's much less than before about money. It is about humanity and emotions and understanding what you want the money to do to evolve and live the life that you want to live. Where can our listeners find more about you, Envestnet, any sort of thought leadership that you want to promote here?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can find Envestnet on LinkedIn. And we try to keep the posts varied and frequent. So lots to see there.
Fantastic. And for our listeners, what is a conversation that's changed your relationship with money? How did what Molly shared about her personal relationship with money and her money history and how it relates to what she actually wants, the value she wants from financial advice, how did that bounce off of you? We'd love to hear about it in the comments or in a DM. Please like or share this podcast with others who need to hear it. And Molly, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Marla.
Thank you for joining us on the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more transformative conversations to you. Until next time, keep discovering, keep growing, and remember, you're in control of your own financial story. Follow us for more conversations on financial confidence, self-discovery, and the future of money.